Part 1. The ship was already dead. Everyone on it just hadn't stopped breathing yet. Not the dramatic kind of dead. No hull breaches, no fire, no screams. Those would have been kinder. This was the quiet dead. The kind where the lights still worked, but the air had a weight to it, thick and old, like something that had been breathed too many times. The recyclers groaned in the walls. Not failing, not yet, but tired. The way a heart gets tired before it stops. 12,000 people on the lower decks knew it before the bridge did. They felt it in their chests. A shallow pull with every breath. A dizziness when they stood too fast. Children pressing their faces to viewports, not crying, just watching. Watching the stars do nothing. The Ola's Mercy had been a generation ship for 80 years. 3-star systems. 1 war. She had carried the Veth people across the black inching distances that made younger vessels weep. She was not young anymore. She was old in the way only deep space ships get old. Joints loose, hull tired, memory cores full of ghosts and course corrections no one remembered making. The failure had begun 6 days ago. A cascade. Power Core 1 to Power Core 2. Then life support. Then the backup to the backup. Elder Navigator Veth had not slept in 40 hours. She stood on the command bridge with her hands behind her back and watched the oxygen curve fall. 3 hours left. Maybe 4 if they shut down everything non-essential and told 12,000 people to sit very still and breathe very slowly. The officers around her said nothing. That was the Veth way. Silence before speech. Stillness before the knife. She turned to her communications officer. A young woman named Alara, barely past her first century, which by Veth standards meant she still had the softness of someone who hadn't watched a ship die yet. Alara was trying very hard to keep her face neutral. She was failing. The Galactic emergency band, Veth said. Alara did not move for 3 full seconds. Every species in the known galaxy monitored that frequency. It was the one channel everyone agreed on. The Veth had never used it. Not once in 800 years of spaceflight. Elder Navigator, Alara said carefully. Are you authorizing? 12,000 people, Veth said. That was all. Alara turned back to her console. Her hands moved. The signal went out. Standard distress packet. Compressed. Encoded. Carrying the Ola's Mercy, her position, the nature of the emergency, the number of souls on board. And one word at the end that Veth had added herself because it felt wrong not to. Please. She stood at the center of the bridge and waited. The Veth did not expect fast responses. Space was large. The nearest shipping lane was 11 hours out. She calculated that if any ship responded, it would come in 12 to 14 hours. She was prepared to wait. The response came in 8 minutes. Alara turned in her chair. Her face had an expression Veth had never seen on a Veth officer before. Something between confusion and the beginning of tears. Elder Navigator, she said. We have a response. Veth crossed to her console. Read the incoming signal. Read it again. It was not a fleet. Not a government vessel. Not a military rescue ship. It was a cargo hauler. Human registered. Out of a mining operation in the mid-rim. The last light. Small. Battered. The kind of ship that looked like it had been salvaged more than once and would be salvaged again. The message was 11 words. Copy that. Coming hard. Don't you dare give up. Captain Marana K. Veth read it a 3rd time. Coming hard, she said out loud. The phrase did not translate cleanly into Veth. There were words for urgency, for speed, for the pressing of engines. This was none of those things. This was informal. Almost reckless. Like the captain had not stopped to compose because there was no time, and also because the words mattered less than the doing. What does that mean? Veth asked. No one answered. Alara was already pulling up the last light's last known position. Calculating distance. Calculating time. Then she said it quietly, half to herself. I think she means don't stop breathing. Veth looked at the oxygen readout again. 2 hours, 47 minutes. She looked at the distance. The last light was 7 hours out. The math did not work. She pulled up the engine output of the human vessel anyway. Read it twice. 150% of rated capacity. That was not a sustainable speed. That was the kind of speed that turned engines into slag. She stood at the viewport and looked out at the dead calm of the outer rim. Somewhere behind her, the recyclers cycled down. 12,000 people below decks. She thought about 800 years of Veth independence. The long, clean history of a species that solved its own problems. She thought about 11 words from a cargo captain she had never met. Don't you dare give up. In the lower decks, a child pressed her forehead against a viewport and felt the cold seep through the glass. She didn't know about the oxygen curve or the 7 hours or the human woman pushing her engine past the point of breaking. She knew the ship was very quiet in a way it had never been quiet before. Somewhere out there, a stranger was coming. The child just waited. The way children wait, completely without armor. Part 2. The last light came out of the dark like a wounded animal running downhill. Captain Marana K had not slept in 30 hours. Her hands on the controls were steady because she did not allow them to shake. Inside her chest, something else was not steady at all. The engine screamed behind her. Not a metaphor. The number 3 manifold had been making a sound like a dying bird for the last 2 hours, and her engineer, an old man named Pollard who had been flying with her for 15 years, had stopped sending status updates. That was how she knew it was bad. Pollard only went quiet when he was out of words. "We have a problem," her navigator said. A young woman named Senna. Sharp. Fast. Scared in a way she was good at hiding. The Veth ship is in a debris field. Marana looked at the screen. The Ola's Mercy sat in the middle of something that should not have been there. Wreckage. Old wreckage. Metal and stone and the bones of ships that had come this way and never left. The Veth had drifted into an ancient graveyard. And between them and safety, between them and any docking approach, between them and the 12,000 people running out of air. Pirates. Not human. Not Veth. Something else. 3 ships. Small. Fast. Ugly in the way that scavengers were always ugly. They had not attacked the Ola's Mercy yet. They did not need to. They were waiting. Circling. Letting the oxygen tick down. Letting the Veth get weak. Then they would board and take what they wanted and leave the rest to drift. Senna zoomed the display. The pirate ships had seen the last light. They were turning. Not running. Turning to intercept. Marana did the math in her head. 7 minutes to intercept. Her ship was a cargo hauler. No weapons. No armor. 1 engine running at 150% and a manifold that was seconds from cracking open. The Veth ship was 3 minutes beyond the pirates. Dead in the water. 12,000 people. She opened the channel to the Ola's Mercy. "Elder Navigator Thesson," she said. Her voice was calm. That was the trick. You kept your voice calm even when everything inside you was on fire. "I see your situation. I need you to listen to me carefully." A pause. Then Thesson's voice, old and measured and very tired. "We are listening." Marana looked at the pirate ships. 3 against 1. No weapons. A dying engine. 7 minutes. "I'm going to draw them off," she said. "When I do, you hard burn toward the debris field. Use the wreckage for cover. There's a station 16 hours from your position. Slow but safe." Another pause. Longer this time. Then Thesson said something that hit Marana in the chest like a physical thing. "You will not survive that." Marana did not answer for a moment. She looked at her crew. Senna at navigation. Pollard in the engine bay, probably on his knees with his hands in the guts of the screaming manifold. She thought about the child on the Veth ship. The one pressing her face to the glass. The one waiting. "Probably not," Marana said. "But 12,000 people will." She cut the channel. Turned to Senna. "Get me an intercept course. Right down their throat." Senna did not argue. That was why Marana kept her. She just turned to her console and ran the numbers. Pollard's voice came through the ship wide. Old. Tired. Calm in the way only a man who had already made peace with everything could be. "Captain," he said, "the manifold is going to go in about 4 minutes. When it does, we lose thrust on the port side. We'll spiral." Marana smiled. It was not a happy smile. "Then we better make those 4 minutes count." Part 3. The last light drove straight at the pirate ships like a knife thrown blind. 3 minutes to intercept. Marana's hands were white on the controls. The engine scream had become a high, thin whine, the sound of something holding together through sheer stubbornness. Pollard was singing in the engine bay. An old shanty, half words she couldn't hear, just the melody bleeding through the ship's frame. He always sang when something was about to break. The pirates scattered, not in fear. In tactics. 2 dove left and right, flanking. The third came straight on, weapons charging. Marana could see the glow of its cannons warming up on the display. She had 30 seconds before it fired. "Senna," she said, "give me a hard cut to port at the last second. Then full reverse burn." Senna did not ask why. She just set the course. The pirate ship fired. Bright lances of energy cut through the dark. close enough that Marana felt the heat bleed through the hull. The last light shuddered. Alarms went off. Something in the cargo bay broke loose and crashed. Now, Marana said. Senna threw the ship hard to port. The last light groaned. The engine manifold chose that exact moment to crack open. Pollard's singing stopped. The port thrust died. The ship began to spiral exactly the way he had said it would. But the spiral was the point. The pirate's second shot went wide, burning past where the last light M would have been if it had kept going straight. And then Marana did the only thing she could do. She killed the remaining thrust and let the ship drift. The 3 pirate vessels overshot. By the time they turned, the last light was already tumbling into the debris field, silent, dark, engines cold. On their screens, it looked like a dead ship. Just another piece of wreckage in a graveyard full of them. Marana counted in the dark. 10 seconds. 20. 30. No weapons fire. The pirates were scanning, but the debris was thick, full of old metal and stone and the ghost signatures of 100 dead vessels. The last light was small, old, easy to miss. She opened a low-power channel to the Ola's Mercy. Now, she whispered. Go now. On the other side of the debris field, the Veth ship moved. Slow at first, then faster. Thessin had cut all non-essential power, killed her running lights, gone dark and quiet. She slid through the wreckage like a fish through reeds. The pirates did not see her. They were still searching for the human ship that had charged them and then vanished. 12,000 people drifted past the scavengers in absolute silence. Marana watched them go on her passive sensors. A small dot moving away, getting smaller, getting safe. She let out a breath she had been holding for 3 minutes. Pollard's voice came through the ship wide. Weak, cracked, but alive. Captain, he said. The manifold is definitely broken. I noticed, Marana said. Good, Pollard said. Just making sure we were on the same page. Senna was laughing. Quietly, almost crying. The sound of someone who had just watched death miss them by inches and could not decide whether to be relieved or terrified. Marana looked at her sensors. The pirates were still out there. Still searching. The last light had no engine. No weapons. No way to run. She looked at the Veth ship disappearing into the dark. Safe. Going home. She leaned back in her chair and waited. The pirates would find her eventually. But not before 12,000 people drew their next breath. Not before the child on the lower decks pressed her hand to the glass and felt the ship start moving again. Not before Thessin looked at her oxygen readouts and watched the numbers stop falling. Marana closed her eyes. Hold on, she whispered. Not to anyone. To herself. To the dark. The pirates would come. But she had bought the time. And sometimes that was all being human meant. You bought the time. You gave it away. You hoped someone on the other end used it to live. Part 4. The dark held them for 37 minutes. Marana counted every one. The last light drifted through the debris field like a ghost. Engines cold. Life support on minimum. The pirates swept past 3 times. Each time closer. Each time slower. On the 4th pass, one of them stopped directly above them. Marana could see its running lights through the viewport. Red. Pulsing. The color of something hunting. Senna had her hand over her mouth. Not making a sound. Just pressing. The way you do when you are trying very hard not to scream. Pollard made it up from the engine bay. Crawled, really. His left arm was burned from the manifold breach, skin black and weeping, but he had wrapped it in a thermal blanket and was not complaining. He sat against the bulkhead and looked at the ceiling and breathed slow. They know we're here, he said quietly. They just haven't decided if we're worth the trouble. Marana nodded. The pirate ship above them was running scans. She could feel them. A prickling at the back of her neck that had nothing to do with physics and everything to do with fear. The scans would find them eventually. The last light was dark, but it was not invisible. No ship was. Then something changed. The pirate ship jerked. Just slightly. A correction burn. Then another. Its running lights flickered. On the comms, Marana heard static. Not regular static. The kind that came from someone shouting over an open channel in a language she did not recognize. Urgent. Angry. Afraid. Senna pointed at the long-range sensors. Her hand was shaking. Captain, she said. Look. Marana looked. A new contact. Emerging from the far side of the debris field. Not small. Not a cargo hauler. Not a pirate. It was a Veth warship. Not the Ola's Mercy. Something else. Something bigger. Something with weapons that showed up on Marana's passive sensors as cold and waiting and very much awake. The Veth had sent help, not because Thesson had called them. The Ola's mercy had been too far out for that. They had sent help because they had been watching. Because the Galactic emergency band went both ways. Because someone on a Veth command deck somewhere had seen the distress signal and seen the human ships responding and had made a decision in less time than anyone thought the Veth capable of. The pirate ship above them stopped hunting. It turned. It ran. The Veth warship did not follow. It did not need to. It fired once. A single shot, clean and precise, the way the Veth did everything. The pirate ship came apart in the dark. No fire. No explosion. Just pieces. Drifting. Done. Marana sat in the silence of her dead ship and watched the Veth warship turn toward her. Its running lights were blue. Steady. Kind, almost. An incoming message. Not on the emergency band. A private channel. Captain Marana K. of the Last Light. A voice she recognized. Thesson. Old. Measured. Not tired anymore. We are coming to get you. Hold on. Marana laughed. It came out wet and broken and more honest than anything she had said in years. You learn that phrase fast, she said. Thesson was quiet for a moment. Then, in the careful voice of someone trying something new, we are learning many things today. Outside the viewport, the blue lights of the Veth warship grew larger. Marana looked at Senna. At Pollard. At her broken ship and her burned engineer and her navigator who had stopped shaking. She did not say anything. There was nothing to say. The call had gone out. They had answered. And someone else had answered them. That was the thing about humans, she thought. Not that they came, but that they made other people want to come too. Part 5. The Veth warship's silent tide pulled alongside the last light like a parent reaching for a child who had fallen. Marana watched through the viewport as the massive vessel blotted out the stars. Blue running lights. Hulls smooth and dark, built in the Veth style. Curves where human ships had angles, a quiet elegance that spoke of centuries of refinement. Docking clamps extended. Not fast. Not slow. Deliberate. The way the Veth did everything. Pollard struggled to his feet. His burned arm hung at his side, but his eyes were clear. He looked at the warship, then at Marana. They're going to want to talk to us, he said. Debrief. Questions. The whole thing. Marana nodded. She knew. The Veth were not human. They would not slap her on the back or call her a hero. They would process. Analyze. File reports. They would thank her in the way they thanked. Precisely, formally, without waste. But something had changed. She could feel it in the way the docking clamps clicked into place. In the way the airlock cycled, slower than human protocols, but gentler. In the way the first face she saw when the inner door opened was not a soldier or an officer. It was a child. The same child. The one from the lower decks of the Ola's Mercy. The one who had pressed her face against the glass. She stood in the airlock doorway in a thermal suit too large for her dark eyes wide, her small hands clasped in front of her. Behind her stood Thesson. The elder navigator looked older than she had on the comms. Thinner. The kind of thin that came from 40 hours without sleep and the weight of 12,000 lives. The child stepped forward. She said something in Veth. Soft. Careful. Like she had practiced it. Marana's translator whispered in her ear. You came back. Marana knelt. It hurt. Everything hurt. The adrenaline was gone, and in its place was a bone-deep exhaustion that made her knees ache and her hands tremble. But she knelt. Yeah, she said. I came back. The child looked at her for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched Marana's face. Small fingers on her cheek. Cold. Curious. The way children touch things they were not sure were real. Thesson spoke. Her voice was steady, but something in it had changed. A softness that had not been there before. The Veth do not have a word for what you did, she said. We have words for courage. For sacrifice. For the giving of oneself for others. But what you did was not those things separately. It was all of them at once. It was something else. She paused. Looked at the child. Looked at Marana. We are creating a new word. It will take time. We are deliberate. But when it is ready, it will be for you. Marana did not know what to say. She was not good with words. She was good with decisions. With turning her ship toward danger and pushing her engine until it broke. Words were harder. She looked at the child. At the small hand still resting on her cheek. What's her name? Marana asked. Thesson hesitated. Then she said something in Veth. The translator rendered it, as she who waited at the glass. Marana smiled. It was a small smile. Tired. Real. That's a good name, she said. The child, she who waited at the glass, said something else. The translator worked on it for a moment. Will you stay? Marana looked at Pollard. He was leaning against the bulkhead, his burned arm wrapped in the thermal blanket, his eyes wet. He nodded. Just once. Marana looked at Senna. Her navigator was crying. Quietly. The way you cry when something you were afraid to hope for actually happens. Marana looked back at the child. For a little while, she said. Then I have to go fix my ship. It's very broken. The child considered this. Then she nodded, very seriously, like she understood completely. I will help, she said. Behind her, Thesson almost smiled. Almost. For a Veth, that was a celebration. Part 6. The last light was towed to Veth Station Orthos over the course of 19 hours. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just steady. The silent tide pulled her through the debris field and out into clear space, and the Veth engineers who came aboard did not ask permission. They simply arrived with toolkits and diagnostic wands, and the quiet efficiency of people who had decided that this broken human ship would not stay broken. Pollard watched them work, at first with suspicion, then with curiosity, then with the particular joy of a man who had spent 15 years alone with a dying engine and suddenly found himself surrounded by colleagues who understood. You're using the wrong gauge on the coolant line, he told one of them. The Veth engineer looked at him, looked at the line, made an adjustment. Better? She asked. Pollard grinned. Better. Marana spent most of the 19 hours in the station medical bay, not because she wanted to, because Thesson had looked at her burned hands, her cracked ribs, her bloodshot eyes, and had said 2 words in a tone that did not allow argument. You rest. She rested. She lay on a Veth medical bed that was too firm and too long and smelled like herbs she could not name, and she watched the ceiling and did not think about the pirate ship coming apart in the dark. She did not think about the manifold cracking. She did not think about the 12,000 people who had drawn their next breath because she had driven her ship into danger with no weapons and no armor and no guarantee of survival. She thought about the child. She who waited at the glass came to the medical bay 4 times. Each time she brought something. A piece of fruit. A drawing. A story in Veth that Marana could not understand, but listened to anyway, because the child's voice was soft and serious and made the room feel less like a hospital and more like somewhere safe. On the 4th visit, the child pressed something into Marana's hand. Small. Cool. Metal. A star. Not real. Carved. Made from scrap, probably, the edges still rough. But shaped carefully. Lovingly. A small bright thing against Marana's palm. For when you are in the dark, the child said. Marana closed her fingers around it. Thank you, she said. And she meant it the way you mean something when you have almost died and someone has given you a reason to be glad you did not. The last light was ready to fly again on the 3rd day. Not fully repaired. The Veth engineers had done what they could, but some things needed human hands and human parts and the particular alchemy of a port that knew her. Pollard filed a list of remaining issues. It was long. He was smiling when he filed it. Marana stood at the airlock of the silent tide and faced Thesson. The elder navigator had recovered some of her weight. Her color was better, but her eyes were different. Softer. The way old eyes got when they had seen something that changed the shape of what they thought was possible. You will always be welcome here, Thesson said. Not as a guest. As something else. We are still finding the word. Marana nodded. She did not trust her voice. The child appeared at Thesson's side. She who waited at the glass. She was not crying. Children rarely cried at goodbyes when they believed the goodbye was temporary. You will come back, the child said. Not a question. Marana knelt, pressed her forehead gently against the child's. A Veth gesture she had learned from watching. I will come back, she said. I promise. The child nodded. Satisfied. The last light departed Orthos Station 6 hours later. The engine was quiet. Not screaming. Just humming. A good sound. A sound that meant going home. Marana sat in her captain's chair. The carved star was mounted on her console next to the Veth Navigator's emblem that Thesson had given her. 2 small bright things in the dark. Senna set the course. Pollard made tea. The stars of the outer rim passed by the viewport, steady and indifferent, and very beautiful. Behind them, the station grew small. Then smaller. Then gone. Ahead of them, the long dark. The shipping lanes. The midrim. Home. Marana touched the carved star. Hold on, she whispered. Not to anyone. To herself. To the memory of a child's hand on her cheek. The last light flew on. Somewhere behind her, on a Veth station at the edge of everything, a child pressed her face against a viewport and watched a small ship disappear into the stars. She did not cry. She waited. That was what she did. She waited. And the humans always came.